Anger often appears faster than understanding. A small comment, a delay, a mistake, or a disagreement can quickly change your mood and affect how you speak and act. Later, when things become quiet again, many people realize they reacted in a way they did not truly want. Words were said too quickly. Tone became harsh. Decisions were made without thinking clearly. This experience is more common than most people admit. It is not only about losing temper. It is about losing control in moments that matter most in relationships, work, and daily life. When anger becomes automatic, it starts shifting outcomes in ways that create distance, regret, and emotional stress. This audiobook explores why this happens inside the mind. It looks at the hidden patterns behind quick emotional reactions and how they slowly build over time. More importantly, it focuses on what can actually be changed in real daily life. You will learn how emotional reactions begin before you even notice them, how small habits shape your responses, and how awareness can interrupt the cycle before anger takes over. It also shows how to build calmer thinking, clearer communication, and stronger emotional control without forcing yourself to become someone else. The goal is simple: to help you respond with more control, think more clearly under pressure, and reduce unnecessary emotional conflict in your life. What you are about to hear is not theory. It is practical understanding that can change how you handle real situations, starting today. Chapter 1. Control emotional reactions before anger damages your important relationships. Anger can arrive so quickly that it feels like it appears before you even decide to feel it. One moment you are speaking normally, and the next your chest is tight, your jaw is clenched, and your voice has changed. A small comment becomes a heavy insult. A delay becomes disrespect. A mistake becomes proof that nobody cares. In those moments, anger does not ask permission. It rushes in and convinces you that you must act right now. That is why so many good relationships suffer not from one huge disaster, but from many small reactions that were never slowed down, never examined, and never controlled. The truth is that anger itself is not always the enemy. It is a signal. It often tells you that something feels unfair, unsafe, disappointing, or out of control. The problem begins when the signal becomes the decision. A wise person does not become strong by never feeling anger. A wise person becomes strong by refusing to let anger lead. This difference changes everything. When you learn to control your emotional reaction before anger damages your important relationships, you begin to protect the people who matter, and you also protect your own future. You stop saying things that cannot be unsaid. You stop creating pain that lasts longer than the moment that caused it. You stop treating temporary emotion as if it were permanent truth. Many people believe they are angry because other people are difficult. Sometimes that is partly true. People can be careless, rude, forgetful, unfair, and draining. Life can be full of pressure. Work can be exhausting. Family can push old wounds. Money problems can make every small issue feel larger. Lack of sleep, hunger, stress, and loneliness can make the mind more sensitive than usual. But even when those things are real, they do not remove your responsibility. They do not force you to speak harshly. They do not force you to slam a door. They do not force you to punish the wrong person. They do not force you to destroy trust. Your environment may provoke you, but your character decides what happens next. This is one of the oldest lessons in Stoic thought, and it remains true today. You do not control every event. You do not control every person. You do not control the tone others use, or the mistakes they make, or the delays that frustrate you. But you do control your response. That response is not a small thing. It is the one area where your power is real. Every time anger rises, you face a choice. You can react from impulse and make the moment worse, or you can pause and answer with discipline. That pause may feel small, but it is the beginning of freedom. If anger has damaged your relationships before then, you already know how expensive it can be. A sharp sentence can echo for days. A cold silence can last for months. An emotional outburst can make a loved one stop feeling safe around you. Once people begin to brace themselves for your reactions, the relationship changes. They speak less honestly. They walk more carefully. They hide things. They stop coming to you for comfort. They stop trusting that difficult moments will stay respectful. This is one of the painful costs of unmanaged anger. It does not only hurt others, it weakens the very bonds you care about most. That is why emotional control matters so much. It is not about becoming cold. It is not about pretending nothing affects you. It is not about swallowing pain until you explode later. It is about becoming steady. It is about learning to feel strongly without becoming destructive. It is about creating enough inner space between what happens and what you do about it. That space is where wisdom lives. The first step is to notice that anger usually has a faster body than mind. Before you have fully thought about what is happening, your body may already know. Your breathing changes, your shoulders, your face tightens, your heart beats harder, your hands tense. Your thoughts begin moving in a narrow direction. You start looking for blame. You start collecting evidence that you are right and the other person is wrong. If you learn to notice these physical signs early, you gain an advantage. You do not have to wait until your words are already sharp. You can catch the emotion while it is still climbing. This means becoming more honest with yourself. The next time irritation rises, ask a simple question inside your mind. What is happening in my body right now? Am I breathing too fast? Is my jaw tight? Are my thoughts speeding up? This kind of self-check may sound small, but it changes the entire path of a reaction. A person who can notice the first signs of anger has a chance to choose a better response before the emotion takes over. That is not weakness. That is discipline. When you feel anger rising, one of the most practical things you can do is slow your body down. Take one deep breath and then another. Lower your shoulders, relax your hands, unclench your jaw. Speak more slowly than your emotion wants you to speak. If needed, say nothing for a moment. Silence can be a shield when used wisely. It gives your mind a chance to catch up with your body. It prevents a temporary feeling from becoming a permanent decision. This may sound simple because it is simple. The challenge is not understanding the idea. The challenge is practicing it when your pride is heated and your emotions want immediate release. That is where true growth begins. A weak habit is easy when life is calm. A strong habit shows itself when life is uncomfortable. If you can stay aware and controlled in the moment that normally leads to regret, then you are changing your life in a real way. There is also a deeper question worth asking. What is the anger protecting? Sometimes anger stands on top of hurt. Sometimes it hides fear. Sometimes it covers embarrassment. Sometimes it appears when someone feels ignored, disrespected, or powerless. A person who is willing to look beneath the anger can learn a great deal. Maybe you are not only angry because the room is too loud. Maybe you are overwhelmed and unseen. Maybe you are not only angry because someone was late. Maybe you felt unimportant. Maybe you are not only angry because a family member spoke sharply. Maybe the old wound of being dismissed has been touched again. When you understand the real source, you can respond more wisely. This does not mean every angry moment comes from a deep wound. Sometimes it is just a bad day. Sometimes fatigue makes everything feel heavier. Sometimes the mind turns small problems into big ones because it has not rested enough. Still, it helps to ask what needs are not being met. Do you need food, sleep, space, clarity, a break from noise, a calmer schedule, a better way to ask for help? Many outbursts begin when basic needs have been ignored for too long. Taking care of your body and daily routine is not separate from emotional control. It is part of it. If you want fewer angry reactions in your relationships, you must become more careful with your assumptions. Anger often grows in the space where facts are missing. Someone does not reply quickly, and the mind says they do not care. A partner forgets something, and the mind says they never pay attention. A friend changes plans, and the mind says, I am not important. A child makes a mistake, and the mind says they are disrespectful. But sometimes the truth is simpler. They were distracted, tired. They were confused. They were dealing with something you did not see. When you train yourself to ask for the full story, Before you decide the meaning, you save yourself from many unnecessary fires. One powerful habit is to replace instant judgment with a single calm question. What else could be true here? That question does not deny your feelings. It just keeps your anger from becoming your only interpretation. It opens the door for patience. It gives people a chance to be human. And that matters because relationships cannot survive forever if every mistake is treated like an attack. Still, there are times when someone truly is careless or unfair. Emotional control does not mean you pretend bad behavior is good. It means you address it without losing yourself. You can be honest without being cruel. You can be firm without being humiliating. You can set a boundary without becoming violent in tone or attitude. In fact, the clearest boundaries are often calm. A calm voice can carry more authority than a loud one because it shows that you are in charge of yourself. A person who shouts may feel powerful for a moment. A person who stays composed is powerful in a deeper way. This is especially important in close relationships because the people closest to you often receive the worst of your stress. Family members see you when you are tired. Partners see you when your patience is low. Children see you when you are stretched thin. Friends may catch the edges of your frustration when work or money has worn you down. That is why it takes extra care to protect the people you love from the pressure you feel elsewhere. They should not have to pay for battles they did not create. If you are carrying stress from one part of life into another part, then part of maturity is learning to notice that transfer before it causes harm. A useful practice is to create a small pause before entering conversations that matter. If you just came from a hard task or a tense situation, do not rush into a difficult talk immediately if you can avoid it. Give yourself a minute. Drink water. Walk around. Breathe. Let your mind settle. Many arguments become larger because people speak while their nervous system is still in fight mode. The body has not returned to balance, and the words come out sharp. A short pause can prevent a long regret. Another key insight is that anger loves certainty. It says, I know exactly what this means. I know exactly why they did it. I know exactly how bad this is. But real wisdom allows room for humility. You may not know everything yet. You may be missing context. You may be assigning meaning too fast. Humility is not weakness. It is a safeguard. It keeps pride from turning a small wound into a serious one. A humble person can still feel angry but does not rush to make the feeling into a verdict. The long-term goal is not to become someone who never feels upset. The long-term goal is to become someone who can stay respectful while upset. This is the kind of person others trust. This is the kind of person who can lead a family, a team, or a community with strength. People do not need perfection. They need steadiness. They need to know that when pressure rises, you do not become unsafe. They need to know that your anger will not become their fear. You can build this steadiness with daily practice. Start by choosing one moment each day to check your emotional temperature. Morning is a good time. Ask yourself how rested you are, how tense your body feels, and what kind of mood you are carrying into the day. If you know you are already irritated, then do not pretend you are fine. Name it honestly. This alone reduces its power. Throughout the day, notice what situations usually spark you. Is it being interrupted, feeling ignored, repeating yourself, being criticized, waiting too long? Once you know your pattern, you can prepare for it instead of being surprised by it. Preparation is one of the quiet strengths of self-control. If you know traffic makes you impatient, plan to leave earlier. If you know certain conversations trigger you, choose a better time. If you know your energy drops when you are hungry, do not skip meals and expect patience to remain strong. These are not small details. They are part of wisdom. A person who respects their own limits is less likely to explode at others. Many angry moments are preventable, not by deeper philosophy alone, but by more honest daily care. You also need a plan for what to do when anger has already risen. Do not wait until the moment arrives to invent your response. Decide in advance. For example, when I feel myself becoming heated, I will stop speaking for 10 seconds. I will relax my hands. I will breathe before answering. I will not send messages while upset. I will not continue a conversation if my voice is getting sharp. I will return when I can speak with respect. These simple rules protect relationships. They also protect your future self from having to apologize for words spoken in a storm. Apology matters too. People with strong emotional control are not people who never fail. They are people who repair quickly and sincerely when they do fail. A good apology does not hide behind excuses. It says, I was wrong, I was disrespectful, you did not deserve that. I am working on changing it. That kind of honesty can heal more than pride ever could. It shows that your commitment to the relationship is stronger than your commitment to your ego. Over time, this builds trust. People learn that even if conflict happens, there is a path back to safety. But do not rely only on apology after the damage. Prevention is better. Each time you choose a calmer response, you strengthen a new habit. At first it may feel awkward. You may even feel like you are holding something back. That is normal. Emotional control can feel uncomfortable when you are used to immediate release. But discomfort is not a sign that you are doing something wrong. Often it is the sign that you are leaving an old pattern behind. If you stay with the practice, the discomfort lessens and the calm becomes more natural. There is a deeper dignity in this work. A person who controls anger is not just avoiding conflict. They are building character. They are becoming reliable under pressure. They are learning that not every insult deserves a reaction, and not every frustration deserves a performance. They are discovering that strength can be quiet. They are proving that peace is not weakness. Peace is mastery. It is a sign that the inner life is not being ruled by every passing impulse. Think about the relationships you value most. The people in them do not need your perfect mood. They need your care. They need your patience. They need your willingness to pause before harming what matters. They need you to remember that a hard day is not a license to wound others. They need the version of you that can feel deeply while still acting wisely. That version of you is not far away. It is built one decision at a time. The next time anger rises, do not ask only how to express it. Ask how to guide it. Ask what it is trying to protect. Ask whether the moment truly needs your full force or only your full attention. Ask whether silence would serve you better than speech. Ask whether the relationship matters more than the urge to win. These questions are not signs of hesitation. They are signs of maturity. They give your mind a higher task than reaction. You may not become calm every time at first. That is fine. Growth is not measured by never struggling. It is measured by how often you return to discipline after you notice the struggle. Every pause you create matters. Every breath matters. Every time you speak more gently than your anger wanted matters. Every moment you choose dignity over impulse matters. These moments shape your character, and they shape how others experience your presence. And slowly something changes. The people around you begin to feel safer. Conversations become easier. Stress does not disappear, but it no longer controls the room. You begin to trust yourself more because you no longer fear every emotion that rises within you. That is a powerful feeling. It brings relief. It brings respect. It brings peace. You start to understand that self-control is not about suppressing life. It is about living it with more skill and less regret. There will always be situations that test you. There will always be moments when people are careless and life is inconvenient. That will not change. What can change is your response. That is where your power lives. That is where your freedom begins. Do not hand your relationships over to whatever emotion appears first. Stand between the feeling and the action. Create space. Choose wisely. Speak with care. Protect what matters. A calmer response is not only good for others, it is good for you. It lowers the burden in your body. It keeps your mind clearer. It helps you sleep better at night because you are not carrying the weight of regret. It gives you the quiet confidence that comes from living in a way you respect. That confidence does not need to shout. It shows itself in steady words, in patient listening, and in the ability to stay grounded when others lose control. This is how real change begins. Not with grand promises, but with one controlled moment at a time. One deep breath, one careful response, one delayed reaction, one respectful sentence, one decision to protect the relationship instead of feeding the anger. Do this again and again, and you will not only reduce conflict. You will become the kind of person who brings calm where there used to be tension. You will become someone others can lean on. You will become harder to shake. You will become easier to trust. And you will understand in a deeper way that the strength you were seeking was never in giving anger everything it wanted. It was in learning how to remain yourself when anger tried to take over. Chapter 2. Recognize hidden triggers that make everyday frustrations feel unbearable. Most people believe anger appears suddenly. They think a small inconvenience ruined their mood, or another person caused the explosion. But anger usually begins long before the visible reaction. What you call an overreaction is often the result of hidden pressure building quietly inside your mind and body for hours, days, or even years. A delayed message feels unbearable because your patience was already exhausted. A simple disagreement feels personal because your emotions were already wounded. A small interruption feels disrespectful because your mind was already overloaded. This is why understanding your hidden triggers is one of the most important steps toward emotional control. Many people spend years fighting anger without ever studying it carefully. They focus only on the final moment when the voice becomes louder or the attitude becomes colder. But if you truly want to stop anger from controlling your life, you must become more observant. You must stop looking only at the explosion and begin looking at the pressure that created it. The hidden trigger matters because it explains why one small event can suddenly feel too heavy to carry. Think about how different your reactions become, depending on your condition. When you are rested, calm, and emotionally balanced, you can handle delays, mistakes, and criticism more easily. But when you are mentally drained, emotionally neglected, or physically exhausted, even a tiny problem can feel unbearable. This shows something important. The situation itself is not always the full reason for your anger. Your internal state shapes how strongly you react. This is why self-awareness matters so much. A person who never studies their emotional patterns remains controlled by them. They keep saying things like, "This is just how I am," or "People always push my buttons." But maturity begins when you stop blaming every emotion on the outside world and start asking deeper questions. Why did this bother me so much today? Why did this small moment create such a strong emotional response? What pressure was already inside me before this happened? Sometimes the hidden trigger is exhaustion. A tired mind loses patience faster. When the body lacks rest, the brain struggles to regulate emotion properly. Small frustrations feel sharper, noise feels more irritating, delays feel more personal. This is why emotional discipline is connected to physical care. Many people try to solve anger while ignoring sleep, stress, hydration, and recovery. But the nervous system cannot stay balanced forever under constant pressure. Imagine someone who sleeps poorly for several nights while carrying financial stress, family pressure, and constant mental noise. Then one morning, another driver cuts them off in traffic. The reaction may seem completely out of proportion to the situation. But the traffic incident was not the true beginning. It was simply the final drop added to an already overflowing emotional container. This is why emotionally intelligent people learn to respect their limits before reaching the breaking point. They understand that frustration becomes dangerous when ignored for too long. They pay attention to their energy instead of pretending to be endlessly strong. They create moments of rest, reflection, and recovery before stress turns into emotional damage. Another hidden trigger is feeling unheard. Many people carry silent frustration because they believe their thoughts, feelings, or efforts are constantly ignored. They may not openly express this pain for a long time. Instead, they continue functioning while resentment slowly grows underneath daily life. Then eventually, a simple conversation becomes the moment where years of emotional neglect suddenly rise to the surface. A partner forgetting something important may not only feel like forgetfulness, it may feel like proof that your needs never matter. A friend interrupting you may not only feel rude, it may remind you of years spent feeling invisible. This is why emotional reactions are often connected to old emotional experiences. The mind remembers pain even when you are not consciously thinking about it. People who never examine these emotional layers become trapped in repeating patterns. They keep reacting strongly without understanding why. They believe the world is becoming more annoying, when in reality unresolved emotional tension is shaping their perception. Life starts feeling heavier because the mind is carrying too many unaddressed emotions. One of the most powerful habits you can build is emotional observation without immediate judgment. Instead of instantly reacting, ask yourself what this moment is truly touching inside you. Is this situation actually unbearable, or is it activating an older emotional wound? Is this frustration about the present moment or accumulated disappointment from the past? This kind of reflection creates emotional distance. It prevents temporary feelings from fully controlling your behavior. It gives wisdom a chance to enter before reaction takes over. Another hidden trigger many people ignore is the need for control. Some people become extremely angry whenever plans change, people disagree, or situations become unpredictable. Underneath that anger is often fear. Uncertainty makes them uncomfortable because they feel emotionally unsafe when life becomes difficult to manage. This fear of losing control creates constant tension. Every inconvenience becomes a threat to inner stability. Every mistake feels personal because it interrupts the mental image of how things should happen. Over time, this creates chronic frustration because life is naturally imperfect, unpredictable, and sometimes unfair. A calmer person understands this reality. They stop demanding perfection from every moment. They stop expecting every person to behave exactly how they want. They stop treating inconvenience as personal punishment. Instead, they accept that discomfort is part of human life. This acceptance reduces emotional resistance and creates more inner peace. You must also recognize how pride becomes a hidden trigger. Pride can make ordinary feedback feel humiliating. It can make disagreement feel disrespectful. It can turn correction into emotional injury. A person controlled by pride constantly feels attacked because their self-worth depends too heavily on being right, respected, or admired at all times. This creates fragile emotional stability. The moment someone questions them, challenges them, or points out a mistake, anger immediately appears. Not because the situation is truly dangerous, but because the ego feels threatened. Strong people do not need to protect their ego every minute. They can listen without collapsing emotionally. They can accept criticism without becoming defensive. They understand that growth requires humility. This mindset creates emotional strength because it removes the constant need to win every interaction. Another important trigger is overstimulation. Modern life constantly attacks attention. Loud environments, endless notifications, crowded schedules, emotional drama, and non-stop information overload the nervous system. When the mind never experiences silence or recovery, patience becomes weaker. This explains why some people react aggressively to small interruptions after long, stressful days. Their nervous system is already overloaded. The brain struggles to process one more demand calmly. Without realizing it, they begin treating ordinary human interaction like another attack on their limited emotional energy. Protecting your mental space becomes essential. You cannot consume endless stress and expect endless patience. Quiet time matters, reflection matters, solitude matters. Your emotional stability depends partly on how well you manage your environment. There are also social triggers connected to personal insecurity. People often become angry when situations expose feelings they already dislike about themselves. Someone insecure about money may react strongly to financial conversations. Someone insecure about intelligence may become defensive during disagreement. Someone insecure about respect may overreact to harmless jokes. In these moments, anger becomes a shield protecting fragile self-worth. But the shield creates more suffering because it prevents honest self-examination. Real confidence grows when you stop hiding behind emotional reactions and begin strengthening your inner foundation directly. This requires courage. It is easier to blame others than to admit certain situations reveal unresolved insecurity. But healing begins with honesty. The more honest you become about your emotional patterns, the less power they hold over you. Many people also underestimate the emotional effect of unresolved resentment. When disappointments remain unspoken, they do not disappear. They stay inside the mind, quietly collecting emotional weight. Over time, even small frustrations activate all the older unresolved emotions attached to them. This is why calm communication matters early. Small issues become dangerous when repeatedly ignored. Honest, respectful conversations prevent emotional buildup. They create clarity before resentment grows into hostility. Still, many people avoid these conversations because they fear discomfort, conflict, or rejection. So they remain silent until anger finally explodes. Then the reaction seems sudden, even though the emotional build-up happened slowly over time. A wiser approach is learning to address problems while still calm. Speak before resentment becomes poison. Express needs clearly before frustration hardens into bitterness. Calm honesty protects relationships far better than emotional explosions. You must also pay attention to the stories your mind creates during frustration. Thoughts shape emotional intensity. When something goes wrong, the mind often exaggerates reality. It says things like, "Nobody respects me, everything always goes wrong, nobody listens to me, or I cannot handle this anymore." These thoughts increase emotional suffering because they turn temporary moments into permanent conclusions. The disciplined mind refuses to believe every emotional thought automatically. It pauses and examines reality carefully. Is this truly permanent? Is this situation really as terrible as my emotions claim? Am I interpreting this fairly? This mental discipline weakens anger before it gains full control. Emotional resilience grows through repeated practice. You train yourself to observe instead of immediately reacting. You learn to identify emotional buildup earlier. You recognize physical signs of tension sooner. You stop pretending frustration came from nowhere. You begin understanding the deeper emotional chain behind your reactions. Over time, this awareness creates freedom. You no longer feel confused by your own emotions. You stop feeling controlled by unpredictable mood swings. Instead, you become more intentional. You respond thoughtfully rather than impulsively. This process also improves relationships deeply. People feel safer around emotionally aware individuals. Conversations become calmer. Conflict becomes more productive. Trust becomes stronger because others no longer fear unpredictable emotional explosions. Most importantly, you begin protecting your own peace. Constant anger is exhausting. It drains mental energy, damages health, weakens relationships, and creates regret. But awareness changes this pattern. The moment you recognize a trigger early, you gain the opportunity to respond differently. You begin catching tension before it becomes aggression. You notice exhaustion before it becomes irritability. You recognize resentment before it becomes bitterness. You identify insecurity before it becomes defensiveness. This awareness creates emotional maturity because you stop fighting only the visible reaction and begin addressing the hidden cause. That is where real transformation happens. Not in pretending anger does not exist, but in understanding it deeply enough to guide it wisely. Emotional control is not emotional suppression. It is emotional understanding combined with disciplined response. Every difficult emotion carries information. Your task is not to fear it, but to study it honestly. Anger often reveals areas needing attention, healing, rest boundaries, or personal growth. When approached wisely, frustration becomes a teacher instead of a destroyer. You do not become stronger by denying emotional struggle. You become stronger by facing it directly without losing control of yourself. That is the difference between emotional immaturity and emotional wisdom. The next time frustration rises, resist the urge to focus only on the outside event. Look deeper. Ask yourself what pressure already existed before this moment. Ask what emotional need feels threatened. Ask whether your reaction matches the reality or the emotional weight you were already carrying inside. These questions create self-awareness. Self-awareness creates emotional discipline. Emotional discipline creates peace. And peace is not weakness. Peace is the result of understanding yourself clearly enough that small moments no longer control your entire emotional world. Chapter 3. Replace impulsive outbursts with calm and thoughtful daily responses. The moment you learn to control your reactions, instead of obeying them, your entire life begins to change. Many people lose respect, opportunities, trust and peace not because they are evil people, but because they never learned how to slow down their emotional responses. They speak too quickly, react too sharply, and make decisions while their emotions are still burning. Later, they regret the words, the tone, the damage, and the distance it created between themselves and others. In the heat of the moment, their reaction feels justified. Hours later, the emotional storm passes and reality becomes clearer. The problem is that relationships can suffer permanent damage from temporary emotions. Impulsive anger creates a dangerous cycle. Something frustrating happens and the mind immediately demands release. The voice rises, harsh words appear. The body becomes tense, thoughts become extreme. Instead of solving the problem, the reaction creates a second problem. Now there is the original issue and the emotional damage added on top of it. One careless moment can turn a simple misunderstanding into emotional distance, lasting weeks, months, or even years. This is why calm responses are not weakness. They are protection. They protect your peace, your dignity, your relationships, and your future. A person who controls emotional reactions stays mentally clear during difficult moments. While others become consumed by emotion, they remain steady enough to think wisely. That steadiness changes everything. Most impulsive reactions happen because people confuse emotion with urgency. They believe every feeling requires immediate expression. But not every emotion deserves instant action. Feeling angry does not automatically mean you should speak immediately. Feeling offended does not mean you must attack back instantly. Emotional maturity begins when you stop treating every feeling like a command. The strongest people are not those who react fastest. The strongest people are those who can pause when emotions try to take control. That pause may only last a few seconds, but it changes the entire direction of the moment. In those few seconds, you give wisdom time to return. Think carefully about how quickly anger can distort thinking. A person who normally speaks kindly suddenly becomes cruel. Someone who cares deeply about family suddenly says things designed to hurt. A calm individual suddenly becomes aggressive because one emotional wave temporarily took control of the mind. This is why emotional discipline matters so much. Without it, emotions become temporary rulers controlling permanent decisions. Replacing impulsive outbursts with thoughtful responses requires training. It does not happen automatically. Your old habits will continue pulling you toward quick emotional release because the brain prefers familiar behavior. If you spent years reacting instantly, your mind learned to treat that pattern as normal. But patterns can change when practiced consistently. The first step is slowing down the physical reaction. Emotional intensity affects the body immediately. Breathing becomes shallow. Muscles tighten. Movement becomes restless. The nervous system prepares for conflict. If you interrupt this physical process early, the emotional reaction weakens faster. The next time irritation rises, focus on your breathing before your words. Take one slow breath through the nose and release it slowly. Relax your shoulders. Lower your voice intentionally. These actions may seem small, but they send signals to the nervous system that danger is not controlling the situation. Calm physical behavior creates calmer thinking. Another important habit is delaying response during emotional moments. You do not need to answer everything immediately. You do not need to win every argument instantly. Many situations improve simply because one person chose patience instead of immediate reaction. Imagine receiving a disrespectful message while already stressed and tired. The impulsive mind wants to answer immediately with equal aggression. But thoughtful people understand something important. Emotional responses created in anger usually create additional suffering later. Instead of reacting immediately, they step away temporarily. They allow the emotional wave to settle before deciding what deserves a response. This habit protects mental clarity. Strong emotions narrow thinking. Calmness expands it. Once emotions settle, you often realize the situation was not as serious as it first appeared. What felt unbearable 20 minutes earlier may later seem manageable. This is why patience creates wisdom. It gives reality time to become clearer. Calm responses also strengthen personal authority. People naturally trust individuals who remain composed under pressure. Emotional steadiness communicates inner strength. Others feel safer around someone who does not explode over every inconvenience. Respect grows when people know your emotions do not control your behavior completely. Impulsive people often believe emotional intensity makes them powerful. In reality, uncontrolled reactions usually weaken influence. Shouting may create fear temporarily, but it rarely creates genuine respect. Calm communication carries more weight because it demonstrates self-mastery. There is also an important difference between expressing emotion and losing control. Healthy emotional expression is honest, respectful, and measured. Losing control is reactive, destructive, and careless. One creates understanding while the other creates damage. You can still express frustration calmly. You can still address problems directly. Emotional discipline does not require emotional silence. It requires emotional responsibility. Your feelings matter, but how you communicate them matters equally. One practical strategy is changing the speed of your speech during stressful moments. Impulsive anger pushes people to speak faster, louder, and harsher. Deliberately slowing your words forces the mind to think more carefully. It becomes harder to say reckless things when speaking slowly and intentionally. Body posture also affects emotional behavior. During anger, many people lean forward, aggressively point fingers, or move abruptly. These physical actions increase emotional intensity. Instead, practice staying physically grounded. Sit down if possible. Relax your hands. Keep movements controlled. Calm posture supports calm thinking. Your environment also shapes your reactions more than you realize. Constant noise, stress, pressure, and overstimulation weaken emotional patience. A person rushing through life without rest becomes emotionally fragile. Small frustrations feel larger because the nervous system never fully recovers. Protecting emotional balance requires creating moments of stillness throughout the day. Quiet mornings, short walks, time away from screens, deep breathing, and intentional reflection help reset mental tension. These habits strengthen emotional resilience gradually. A calmer lifestyle supports calmer reactions. Another essential skill is learning to separate intention from impact. Many impulsive arguments begin because people immediately assume the worst about others. A forgotten task becomes proof of disrespect. A delayed response becomes evidence of rejection. A disagreement becomes personal attack. Thoughtful individuals resist making instant conclusions. They ask questions before reacting emotionally. They seek understanding before assigning blame. This prevents many unnecessary conflicts because reality is often less hostile than emotional assumptions suggest. When someone disappoints you, pause before creating a story about their motives. You may not know the full picture yet. People make mistakes while tired, distracted, overwhelmed, or emotionally struggling themselves. Assuming malicious intent too quickly creates emotional reactions based on incomplete understanding. Another major reason impulsive outbursts happen is emotional accumulation. Small frustrations ignored throughout the day quietly build pressure inside the mind. Eventually, one minor event triggers an explosion far larger than the actual situation deserves. This is why emotional maintenance matters daily. Reflect regularly. Release stress in healthy ways. Speak honestly about concerns before resentment grows. Exercise helps. Writing helps. Quiet thinking helps. Honest conversation helps. Emotional pressure becomes dangerous when stored too long without healthy release. You must also learn how to tolerate discomfort without immediately escaping through reaction. Emotional discomfort is part of life. Frustration, disappointment, embarrassment, and stress cannot always be avoided. But impulsive reactions often happen because people cannot tolerate uncomfortable feelings patiently. A disciplined mind understands that emotions rise and fall naturally. You do not need to obey every emotional wave immediately. Feelings pass more quickly when observed calmly instead of acted upon impulsively. This perspective creates emotional freedom. Instead of becoming trapped inside reactions, you begin observing emotions with more distance. You notice anger without instantly becoming anger. That awareness changes your relationship with difficult emotions completely. There is also wisdom in recognizing that many arguments are not worth your peace. Some conflicts solve nothing. Some people enjoy emotional chaos. Some situations simply do not deserve your energy. Maturity means learning when silence is more powerful than engagement. Not every criticism requires defense. Not every rude comment deserves retaliation. Protecting inner peace sometimes means refusing unnecessary emotional battles entirely. This does not mean becoming passive or weak. It means becoming selective. Wise people conserve emotional energy for what truly matters. They stop wasting peace on meaningless conflict. Another important practice is reflecting after emotional moments honestly. If you lose control, do not simply justify it automatically. Study it carefully. What triggered the reaction? What thoughts intensified it? What physical signs appeared beforehand? What could you do differently next time? This reflection strengthens self-awareness. Over time, you begin recognizing emotional patterns earlier. You catch irritation before it becomes aggression. You notice tension before it becomes harshness. This awareness gradually changes behavior because you stop operating unconsciously. Progress requires patience. Emotional habits built over years do not disappear overnight. There will be moments where you still react poorly. The goal is improvement, not perfection. Every calmer response strengthens the new pattern. Every thoughtful pause weakens the old one. Celebrate small victories quietly. The moment you stay calm during a situation that once triggered an outburst, you are changing your character. The moment you choose understanding over aggression, you are building emotional maturity. These moments matter because they slowly reshape how you experience life. Your relationships improve significantly when emotional reactions become steadier. People feel safer speaking honestly around you. Communication becomes healthier. Conflict becomes more constructive. Trust grows because others know disagreement will not automatically become emotional destruction. Most importantly, your inner life becomes lighter. Constant emotional reactivity is exhausting. It drains energy, clouds judgment, and creates regret. Calmness brings mental clarity. Thoughtful responses reduce unnecessary suffering. Life becomes less chaotic because your emotions stop controlling every difficult moment. This transformation begins with one important decision. Stop admiring emotional intensity and start respecting emotional discipline. Quick reactions are easy. Thoughtful responses require strength. Anyone can explode during pressure. Remaining calm requires self-control, awareness, and patience. The world constantly encourages emotional impulsiveness. People are praised for reacting instantly, expressing every feeling immediately, and treating self-control as weakness. But lasting peace comes from mastering yourself, not from obeying every emotional impulse. Your future depends heavily on how you handle emotional moments. Careers, relationships, families, friendships, and opportunities are all affected by emotional behavior. One reckless reaction can damage years of trust. One thoughtful response can prevent unnecessary pain completely. Every difficult moment gives you a choice. You can continue repeating old patterns or begin practicing something stronger. You can allow emotions to lead your behavior, or you can guide emotions with wisdom. That choice may feel small in the moment, but repeated daily, it shapes your entire character. A calm mind sees solutions faster. A thoughtful person creates less regret. An emotionally disciplined individual protects both peace and relationships more effectively. These qualities are not natural gifts reserved for a few people. They are skills built through awareness, repetition, and honest effort. The next time frustration rises, remember this clearly. You do not have to react immediately. You do not have to surrender control because emotions feel intense. You are capable of pausing, thinking, breathing, and responding with dignity. That pause is where transformation begins. And once you master that pause, your life will no longer be controlled by every passing emotional storm. Chapter 4. Strengthen emotional discipline through small and consistent daily habits. The person who masters small daily habits becomes emotionally stronger than the person who depends only on motivation. Most people wait for dramatic moments before deciding to change. They want a powerful breakthrough, sudden inspiration, or a life-changing realization that instantly transforms their behavior. But emotional discipline is rarely built in dramatic moments. It is built quietly through ordinary decisions repeated consistently over time. The way you wake up, speak, respond, think, rest, and handle pressure every single day slowly shapes the strength of your emotional life. Many people believe emotional control depends mainly on personality. They say things like, "This is just how I am," or "I have always had a short temper." But emotional discipline is not fixed at birth. It grows through repeated practice. Just like the body becomes stronger through physical training, the mind becomes steadier through consistent mental habits. Every reaction you repeat becomes easier to repeat again. If you constantly respond with impatience, frustration, or emotional intensity, your mind learns that pattern deeply. Eventually it becomes automatic, but the opposite is also true. If you repeatedly practice calmness, patience, awareness, and self-control, those responses also become more natural over time. This is why small habits matter more than occasional emotional promises. A person who makes one big emotional decision but changes nothing daily usually falls back into old behavior quickly. Real transformation happens when discipline becomes part of ordinary life instead of temporary motivation. The first habit that strengthens emotional discipline is waking up intentionally instead of emotionally rushing into the day. Many people begin mornings already mentally overwhelmed. The moment they wake up, they immediately check messages, worry about problems, or mentally replay stress before their mind has even settled. This creates emotional tension before the day properly begins. A calmer approach creates emotional stability early. Wake up slowly. Take a few quiet moments before absorbing outside noise. Breathe deeply. Stretch your body. Allow your mind to wake gradually instead of violently entering stress immediately. The emotional tone of your morning often affects the emotional quality of the entire day. Your physical condition also directly affects emotional discipline. A tired, unhealthy, neglected body struggles to support a balanced mind. Poor sleep weakens patience. Constant junk food affects energy and emotional regulation. Lack of movement creates physical tension that often becomes emotional irritability. Taking care of your body is not vanity. It is emotional preparation. A person who regularly sleeps well, exercises, consistently drinks enough water, and respects physical recovery creates a stronger foundation for emotional control. Many emotional outbursts happen partly because the nervous system is exhausted and overloaded. Movement is especially important. Exercise releases emotional tension stored inside the body. Stress, frustration, anxiety, and pressure often build physically without people realizing it. Walking, running, stretching, or training regularly helps the nervous system release accumulated tension before it becomes emotional aggression. Even 10 quiet minutes walking alone can change the emotional direction of an entire day. During those moments, the mind slows down, thoughts become clearer, emotional pressure softens. Simple daily movement creates emotional balance far more effectively than many people realize. Another powerful daily habit is practicing delayed reaction in small situations. Emotional discipline grows through repetition in ordinary moments. If you cannot remain patient during small frustrations, you will struggle during larger challenges. When standing in line, practice patience instead of irritation. When someone interrupts, you practice calm listening instead of immediate annoyance. When technology moves slowly, practice acceptance instead of emotional frustration. These moments may seem insignificant, but they are daily opportunities to strengthen emotional endurance. Most people train impatience constantly without realizing it. They react immediately to discomfort. They complain instantly during inconvenience. They become irritated the moment life stops moving according to personal preference. Over time, this creates emotional fragility because the mind loses tolerance for ordinary difficulty. But disciplined individuals train calmness intentionally. They use small daily frustrations as opportunities to strengthen self-control. Instead of seeing inconvenience as punishment, they treat it as emotional practice. This mindset gradually builds resilience. The words you speak daily also shape emotional behavior deeply. Negative speech increases emotional negativity. Constant complaining, criticism, sarcasm, and aggressive language condition the mind toward frustration. Eventually, irritation becomes the default emotional response because the mind constantly rehearses it through speech. Pay attention to your language carefully. The way you describe life affects how you emotionally experience it. If every inconvenience becomes a disaster in your speech, your emotions eventually believe it. But calmer language creates calmer thinking. This does not mean pretending life is perfect. It means speaking realistically instead of emotionally exaggerating every difficulty. Strong people remain honest without becoming emotionally dramatic. Another essential habit is protecting mental space from constant overstimulation. Many people consume endless noise every day. Social media arguments, negative news, emotional entertainment, and non-stop distraction overload the nervous system. Then they wonder why their patience feels weak and their emotions feel unstable. The mind needs silence to recover. Quiet moments allow emotional tension to settle naturally. Even short periods away from screens, noise, and constant stimulation help rebuild mental clarity. Without recovery, emotional exhaustion slowly grows beneath the surface. Reading thoughtful material daily also strengthens emotional discipline. The mind becomes shaped by whatever it consumes repeatedly. If your attention constantly feeds on anger, conflict, outrage, and negativity, your emotions become more reactive. But wisdom, calm reflection, and meaningful ideas gradually strengthen emotional maturity. Journaling can also become a powerful emotional habit. Writing thoughts clearly forces the mind to slow down and organize emotions more rationally. Many emotional reactions lose intensity once written honestly on paper. Journaling creates self-awareness because it helps identify emotional patterns that normally stay unconscious. A person who regularly reflects understands themselves more deeply. They recognize recurring triggers faster. They notice emotional buildup earlier. This awareness prevents many impulsive reactions because emotional tension gets addressed before reaching dangerous levels. Another daily habit that strengthens emotional stability is keeping small promises to yourself consistently. Emotional discipline grows when self-trust grows. If you constantly ignore your own goals, routines, and standards, your mind learns inconsistency. But every time you follow through on a commitment, you strengthen inner reliability. This could be something simple: waking up when planned, finishing a task before procrastinating, keeping your environment clean, exercising regularly, speaking respectfully during difficult conversations. These habits seem unrelated to anger at first, but they build overall self-control. Discipline in one area strengthens discipline in others. Emotional discipline also improves when you stop expecting comfort every moment. Many emotional reactions come from resistance to discomfort. People become angry because something feels inconvenient, tiring, boring, or difficult. But life naturally includes discomfort. Trying to avoid every unpleasant feeling creates emotional weakness. Strong individuals train themselves to tolerate discomfort calmly. They accept that stress, frustration, delay, and uncertainty are normal parts of life. This acceptance reduces emotional resistance and increases resilience. Cold weather, traffic mistakes, criticism, waiting, setbacks, and disappointment stop feeling like personal attacks. They become ordinary human experiences instead of emotional emergencies. Gratitude is another habit that quietly strengthens emotional balance. An ungrateful mind focuses constantly on what is missing, wrong, or disappointing. This creates chronic dissatisfaction. Over time, the person becomes emotionally sensitive to every flaw in life. But gratitude shifts attention toward what still remains valuable. Health, relationships, opportunities, shelter, food, progress, learning, and peaceful moments become visible again. Gratitude does not erase problems, but it prevents the mind from becoming consumed only by negativity. Take a few moments daily to recognize something meaningful in your life. This habit trains the mind to notice stability instead of constantly searching for frustration. Boundaries also matter deeply for emotional discipline. Many people become emotionally drained because they allow endless negativity, conflict, or pressure into their lives without protection. Constant exposure to toxic behavior eventually weakens emotional balance. Emotionally disciplined people understand the importance of healthy distance. They do not participate in every argument. They do not absorb every problem around them. They protect their peace carefully because they understand emotional energy is limited. This also means learning when rest is necessary. Burnout destroys emotional patience. A person running on exhaustion eventually reacts emotionally to small situations because their nervous system is overwhelmed. Rest is not laziness when genuinely needed. Recovery allows emotional strength to rebuild. Consistency matters more than intensity in every area of emotional growth. Many people try extreme emotional self-improvement briefly, then quit completely. Sustainable habits create deeper, long-term change. Small daily discipline repeated for months matters far more than occasional emotional effort. You do not need to become perfect overnight. You only need to become slightly more aware, slightly calmer, and slightly more disciplined repeatedly over time. Small progress accumulates quietly until eventually your emotional reactions begin changing naturally. There will still be difficult days. Emotional discipline does not remove human struggle completely. There will still be moments of frustration, disappointment, and stress. But consistent habits change how you carry those emotions. Instead of becoming overwhelmed, you become steadier. People around you will notice the difference before you fully realize it yourself. Conversations become calmer. Reactions become slower. Your presence feels more grounded. Others begin trusting your emotional stability because they no longer fear unpredictable outbursts. Most importantly, your relationship with yourself changes. You stop feeling controlled by every passing emotion. You begin respecting your own ability to remain composed during pressure. That self-respect creates quiet confidence. This confidence is not loud, dramatic, or aggressive. It is stable. It comes from knowing you can handle discomfort without collapsing emotionally. It comes from proving to yourself repeatedly that emotions no longer completely control your behavior. Every small habit matters because character is built daily, not occasionally. The way you respond to ordinary moments eventually shapes how you respond during major challenges. Calmness practiced daily becomes available during crisis. Patience practiced consistently becomes strength during conflict. The disciplined life may appear simple from the outside, but its effects are powerful. Small habits create emotional clarity. Emotional clarity creates wiser decisions. Wiser decisions create healthier relationships and greater peace. Your future emotional stability depends less on grand emotional breakthroughs and more on what you repeatedly practice every day. The person you become tomorrow is already being shaped by the habits you strengthen today. Chapter 5. Stop expecting perfection from people, situations, and personal outcomes. The faster you stop demanding perfection from life, the faster you reclaim your peace. A large amount of human frustration comes from one painful habit that many people never fully notice. They expect people, situations, and outcomes to unfold exactly the way they imagined. When reality fails to match that mental picture, anger, disappointment, and emotional exhaustion quickly appear. The problem is not always the situation itself. The deep problem is the rigid expectation placed on life beforehand. Many people walk through life carrying invisible demands. They expect others to always understand them correctly. They expect relationships to remain smooth. They expect plans to work without interruption. They expect themselves to perform flawlessly under pressure. Then reality behaves like reality. People misunderstand things. Plans fail. Delays happen. Emotions become messy, mistakes appear. Suddenly frustration grows because life refused to obey personal expectations. Perfection sounds harmless at first because it often hides behind good intentions. A person may simply want things done properly. They may want respectful communication, stable relationships, successful work, or organized routines. None of these desires are wrong. The problem begins when healthy standards quietly become emotional rigidity. Once perfection becomes emotionally necessary, every flaw starts feeling unbearable. This mindset creates constant tension. The mind remains trapped in resistance against ordinary human imperfection. Small mistakes feel larger than they truly are because the emotional expectation was unrealistic from the beginning. A delayed response becomes disrespect. A misunderstanding becomes betrayal. A personal mistake becomes proof of failure. The emotional reaction becomes extreme because the expectation was too absolute. People often suffer not because life is entirely terrible, but because reality refuses to behave perfectly every moment. Emotional maturity begins when you stop fighting this truth. Human beings are imperfect by nature. Every person you love will eventually disappoint you in some way. Not always intentionally, not always seriously, but inevitably. They will forget things sometimes. They will misunderstand your feelings occasionally. They will have bad moods, stressful days, emotional limitations, and moments where they fail to meet your expectations fully. If you expect flawless behavior from imperfect people, you will spend much of life frustrated. Relationships become emotionally exhausting when every mistake feels unacceptable. People begin walking carefully around perfectionistic individuals because they fear constant criticism, disappointment, or emotional reactions. This creates emotional distance instead of connection. Nobody feels fully relaxed around someone who demands impossible standards constantly. The relationship slowly loses warmth because perfection leaves little room for ordinary human weakness. Accepting imperfection does not mean accepting harmful behavior endlessly. Wisdom still requires boundaries, standards, and self-respect. But emotional peace grows when you understand the difference between human imperfection and true disrespect. Not every mistake is a personal attack. Not every inconvenience deserves emotional intensity. Sometimes people are simply tired, distracted, overwhelmed, or emotionally struggling themselves. Sometimes situations fail because life is unpredictable, not because the universe is targeting you personally. Calm people understand this deeply. They stop interpreting every imperfection as emotional betrayal. Perfectionism also creates suffering internally. Many people become angry at themselves constantly because they expect impossible performance from their own minds and lives. One mistake ruins the entire day. One failure becomes evidence that they are not good enough. One imperfect moment triggers shame, frustration, and self-criticism. This emotional pressure becomes exhausting, because perfection can never fully be achieved permanently. Even successful people experience setbacks, confusion, emotional struggle, and uncertainty. Human growth is naturally uneven. Some days feel productive, focused, and disciplined. Other days feel difficult, messy, and emotionally heavy. This does not mean you are failing. It means you are human. The perfectionistic mind struggles to tolerate ordinary imperfection. It constantly searches for flaws, weaknesses, and unfinished problems. Even during success, it focuses on what still feels incomplete. This creates chronic dissatisfaction because the mind never allows itself to rest peacefully. A wiser perspective understands that progress matters more than flawless performance. Emotional stability improves when you stop demanding perfection from yourself every moment. You begin focusing on effort, consistency, learning, and growth instead of impossible standards. Think about how many people delay happiness while waiting for perfect conditions. They tell themselves they will finally feel calm once everything is fully organized, successful, stable, and complete. But life rarely stays perfectly stable for long. One challenge ends and another begins. One problem disappears and a new uncertainty appears. If your peace depends entirely on perfect circumstances, your peace will remain fragile. Strong people learn how to stay emotionally grounded, even while life remains imperfect around them. They stop treating discomfort as proof that life is broken. They understand that uncertainty, inconvenience, and struggle are natural parts of existence. This mindset changes emotional reactions dramatically. Delays stop feeling catastrophic. Mistakes stop feeling humiliating. Imperfect days stop feeling like personal failure. Emotional resilience grows because acceptance replaces constant resistance. Perfectionism also damages communication. People expecting flawless understanding from others often become emotionally reactive during normal disagreements. Instead of calmly clarifying misunderstandings, they immediately feel offended, frustrated, or emotionally distant. Healthy communication requires patience, because human beings cannot read each other perfectly. Even people who deeply care about one another will sometimes misinterpret tone, intention, or emotion. Calm relationships survive because both individuals allow room for clarification instead of instantly assuming the worst. This requires humility. Humility allows people to admit misunderstanding without shame. It allows forgiveness. It allows patience during imperfect moments. Pride demands perfection because pride struggles to tolerate being wrong, disappointed, or emotionally uncomfortable. Emotionally disciplined individuals release this constant need for life to unfold exactly according to personal preference. They still pursue goals and maintain standards, but they remain flexible mentally. When problems appear, they adapt instead of collapsing emotionally. Adaptability is one of the strongest forms of emotional strength. Life changes constantly. Plans fail unexpectedly. People behave unpredictably. Health, finances, careers, and relationships all experience uncertainty. Rigid minds break under this reality. Flexible minds adjust while maintaining inner stability. There is also wisdom in understanding that perfection often destroys appreciation. When you focus constantly on flaws, you stop noticing value. The imperfect relationship still contains love, loyalty, support, and shared memories. The imperfect day still contains opportunities, lessons, and meaningful moments. The imperfect version of yourself still deserves patience, respect, and growth. Gratitude becomes difficult when perfection controls perception. The mind becomes blind to what is already good because it remains obsessed with what still feels imperfect. Many people damage their own happiness by constantly comparing reality to idealized fantasies. Social media, unrealistic expectations, and personal pressure create imaginary standards no real human life can fully match. Then ordinary life starts feeling disappointing. Because it cannot compete with unrealistic mental images, real life is often slower, messier, quieter, and more imperfect than fantasy. But it also contains something deeper. It contains authenticity, genuine growth, relationships, peace, and meaning rarely arrive through perfect circumstances. They develop through ordinary imperfect experiences, handled with wisdom and patience. Think about the strongest people you know. Most likely they are not perfect individuals, living perfect lives. They are people who learned how to remain steady, despite imperfection. They adapted during disappointment. They stayed kind during stress. They continued growing, despite mistakes. Their strength came from resilience, not flawless living. Emotional freedom increases when you stop needing constant control over every outcome. Many frustrations come from trying to force certainty onto uncertain situations. But control is limited. You cannot fully control people, weather, timing, opinions, emotions, or every future event. You can control effort, attitude, preparation, honesty, and response. Focusing energy there creates peace because it directs attention toward what truly belongs within your responsibility. Stoic wisdom teaches an important truth here. Much suffering comes from demanding control over things outside personal authority. Calmness grows when you accept reality instead of fighting endlessly against its imperfect nature. This acceptance is not weakness or passivity. It is intelligent, emotional balance. You still work hard, care deeply, and pursue meaningful goals, but you stop emotionally collapsing every time reality becomes inconvenient. The next time frustration appears, ask yourself an honest question. Am I reacting to reality itself, or to my expectation of how reality should have been? This question creates awareness. Often the emotional pain comes less from the event and more from resistance against imperfection. Another useful habit is mentally preparing for difficulties, instead of assuming everything will always go smoothly. Calm people understand that obstacles, misunderstandings, delays, and disappointments are normal parts of life. Because they expect occasional difficulty, they react with more stability when challenges appear. Unrealistic optimism often creates emotional fragility. Balanced realism creates resilience. When you accept that life naturally contains both smooth and difficult moments, your emotions stop becoming shocked by ordinary problems. This perspective improves relationships deeply. You stop expecting others to satisfy every emotional need perfectly. You become more patient during misunderstandings. You appreciate effort instead of demanding flawless execution. Love grows healthier when perfection stops controlling it. Your relationship with yourself also softens. Instead of attacking yourself constantly for mistakes, you begin responding with responsibility and patience. You correct errors without destroying self-worth. Growth becomes sustainable because shame no longer controls the process. No human being becomes emotionally healthy through endless self-punishment. Real growth requires accountability combined with compassion. Discipline matters, but so does patience. The goal is not lowering standards completely. The goal is removing emotional rigidity. Strong standards guide behavior. Perfectionism destroys peace. There is an important difference between pursuing excellence and demanding flawless reality. Excellence allows learning, adjustment, and humanity. Perfection demands impossible certainty. One creates growth, while the other creates chronic frustration. A peaceful life does not come from controlling every variable perfectly. It comes from developing enough inner stability to handle imperfect moments wisely. Every day gives opportunities to practice this mindset. Plans change unexpectedly. People make mistakes. Your own emotions fluctuate. Circumstances become inconvenient. During these moments, you can either demand perfection and suffer emotionally, or accept reality calmly and respond intelligently. That choice shapes emotional health more than most people realize. The person who releases perfection gains something far more valuable than control. They gain peace, clarity, flexibility, gratitude, and emotional strength. And those qualities create a far richer life than perfection ever could. Chapter 6. Build self-awareness before anger controls your words and behavior. The moment you learn to understand your own mind before anger speaks for you, your life becomes far easier to trust. Anger becomes dangerous when it moves faster than awareness. A person may believe they are simply reacting to the moment, when in truth they are being pulled by habits, thoughts, fears, and pressures they never examined closely. This is why self-awareness is not optional for emotional growth. It is the inner skill that allows you to notice what is rising inside you before it takes control of your voice, your choices, and your relationships. Without self-awareness, anger can make you say things you do not truly mean. It can make your tone sharper than your values. It can make your body stiff, your mind narrow, and your judgment careless. But when you learn to observe yourself honestly, you begin to interrupt the damage before it starts. Many people live too far outside themselves. They know what everyone else is doing wrong. They can notice the faults of family, co-workers, friends, and strangers in detail. But they rarely stop long enough to examine their own inner world. They do not ask what they are feeling, why they are feeling it, and what they are about to do with that feeling. Because of that, they remain easy to control from the inside. Any stress, any slight, any delay, any criticism can push them into an emotional state that decides for them. The lack of awareness creates the illusion of helplessness. Self-awareness changes that. It gives you distance from the impulse. It allows you to say, I am becoming irritated, instead of simply becoming irritation. That small difference matters more than many people realize. Once you can notice anger rising, you are no longer fully trapped inside it. You have created a space where choice becomes possible. In that space you can breathe before speaking. You can think before accusing. You can step back before damaging a relationship. That is where maturity begins. A self-aware person learns to study patterns. They stop pretending each outburst is completely random. They look for the situations that repeatedly stir them. Maybe they become more irritable when they are hungry. Maybe lack of sleep makes every conversation heavier. Maybe certain tones of voice remind them of old pain. Maybe being ignored triggers a deeper fear of not mattering. Maybe feeling rushed makes them lose patience quickly. None of this is weakness. It is information. And information is power when you use it honestly. The danger comes when people ignore these patterns and blame every reaction on the outside world. They say, others made me angry, as if they had no role at all. But the truth is more complex. Other people may trigger the feeling, yet your response still belongs to you. Self-awareness does not remove responsibility. It strengthens it. It teaches you to notice the chain of events inside yourself rather than hiding behind excuses. A useful practice is to check in with yourself several times a day. Not in a dramatic way. Not in a forced or artificial way. Simply pause and ask, what is going on inside me right now? Is my body tense? Is my breathing shallow? Am I holding frustration from something earlier? Did I sleep enough? Am I trying to carry too much without rest? These questions may sound basic, but they can uncover hidden emotional pressure long before it becomes anger. A person who asks these questions regularly becomes harder to surprise emotionally. The body often speaks before the mouth does. Your shoulders rise, your jaw tightens, your hands clench, your chest feels tight, your breathing becomes fast or shallow. Many people ignore these signals until they are already fully reactive. But the body is often warning you early. It is saying, slow down. Something is building. If you learn to respect those signs, you can intervene before words escape that you later regret. Self-awareness also requires honesty about what anger is protecting. Sometimes anger is the surface feeling. Under it may be hurt. Under it may be embarrassment. Under it may be fear of being dismissed. Under it may be shame. A person who only sees the anger never reaches the deeper need. But a person who is willing to look more carefully can uncover the real problem. Maybe the issue is not only what happened today. Maybe it touched an old wound you never fully addressed. That insight is not meant to excuse harmful behavior. It is meant to help you heal it. When you understand the deeper cause of your reactions, you begin to respond with more wisdom and less confusion. Instead of asking, why am I always so angry, you begin asking, what is this anger trying to tell me? That question opens the door to growth. It moves you from blind reaction to thoughtful examination. It helps you see that emotions carry messages and not every message has to become a fight. One of the strongest habits you can build is naming your emotional state in simple, honest words. I am irritated. I feel overwhelmed. I am embarrassed. I feel ignored. I am carrying too much today. I need quiet. This kind of language keeps emotion from becoming chaos. When feelings remain vague, they often grow bigger. When you name them clearly, they become easier to understand. Clear words create clear thinking. Clear thinking creates better choices. Self-awareness also means watching the stories your mind tells during stress. The mind often exaggerates. It turns one awkward moment into proof of disrespect. It turns one mistake into evidence that nothing ever works. It turns one criticism into a personal attack. If you do not examine these stories, they will shape your emotional life unfairly. A self-aware person notices when the mind starts inventing drama. They pause and ask whether the thought is true or simply intense. This is where discipline and awareness support each other. Awareness shows you what is happening. Discipline decides what to do next. If you know you are becoming reactive, you can lower your voice. If you know you are beginning to assume the worst, you can wait before speaking. If you know you are tired, you can avoid important conflict until you have rested. These small choices protect your character more than dramatic promises ever could. Another part of self-awareness is understanding your limits without feeling ashamed of them. Everyone has points where patience weakens. Everyone has moments when stress is high and emotional strength is low. The wise person respects these limits instead of denying them. They do not pretend to be fine when they are not. They do not insist on pushing through every discussion while already overwhelmed. They choose timing carefully because they understand that a tired mind is more likely to speak carelessly. You become safer to others when you know your own state. People do not want perfection. They want consistency. They want to know that your moods will not secretly rule your behavior. A self-aware person builds that trust by becoming less surprised by their own emotions. They learn what weakens them and what restores them. They take care of themselves before pressure becomes damage. Journaling can help with this process because it slows the mind down enough to be honest. Writing down what happened, what you felt, and how you responded can reveal patterns you missed in the moment. You might discover that you become angry every time you feel interrupted after a stressful morning. You might see that certain people or certain subjects pull you into old habits quickly. Once you see the pattern clearly, you can prepare for it instead of being ruled by it. Reflection after conflict is also powerful. Instead of only feeling regret, later ask what happened inside you before the reaction. What did you believe in that moment? What did you fear? What did you need? What did you ignore? This kind of reflection is not about blaming yourself endlessly. It is about learning. Every honest review makes the next moment easier to handle with wisdom. Self-awareness does not make you emotionless. It makes you reliable. It does not erase anger. It gives you the ability to notice anger without being consumed by it. That is a profound difference. A person with self-awareness can still feel deeply while staying responsible. They can still disagree firmly while remaining respectful. They can still protect themselves without becoming destructive. The more you practice this, the more natural it becomes. At first, you may only catch your emotions after they have already risen. Over time, you begin catching them earlier. Then you catch the body signs, then the thoughts, then the tension before it becomes a reaction. That progression is real growth. It shows that awareness is becoming stronger than impulse, and once that happens, your words begin to change. Your behavior begins to change. Your relationships begin to change. People feel the difference because they are no longer walking carefully around an unpredictable reaction. They can speak to you more openly. They can trust your presence more fully. You also begin to trust yourself more because you are no longer surprised by every emotional wave that passes through you. That is the quiet power of self-awareness. It helps you see yourself clearly enough to stop anger from speaking before wisdom does. It keeps your values in charge when emotions rise. It teaches you that not every feeling deserves immediate expression, and not every impulse deserves obedience. Over time, this one skill changes the direction of your life. Because once you can see yourself clearly, you no longer have to fear your own reactions as much. You can understand them, guide them, and live with far more peace than you had before. Chapter 7. Practice patience during stressful moments that normally provoke emotional reactions. Your greatest strength will be revealed in the moments when pressure tries to steal your patience, but you remain calm. Anyway, anyone can appear emotionally balanced when life feels easy, comfortable, and predictable. Real character becomes visible during stressful moments when emotions rise quickly and the mind feels overwhelmed. That is where patience becomes powerful. Patience is not passive weakness. It is emotional control under pressure. It is the ability to stay thoughtful when your feelings demand immediate reaction. It is the quiet decision to remain steady while chaos tries to pull you into impulsive behavior. Many people misunderstand patience completely. They think patience means allowing disrespect, tolerating everything silently, or pretending frustration does not exist. But true patience is much deeper than silence. It is emotional endurance. It is the discipline to handle difficult moments without losing your clarity, dignity, or self-control. Stressful situations reveal emotional habits very quickly. A delayed response, a loud environment, unexpected criticism. Financial pressure, family conflict, or repeated inconvenience can instantly trigger frustration. During these moments, the mind wants relief as quickly as possible. That relief often comes through emotional reaction. The voice becomes sharper, the body becomes tense, words become careless. The person stops responding wisely and starts reacting emotionally. The problem is that emotional reactions rarely improve stressful situations. Most of the time, they create additional damage. The original difficulty remains while new tension appears on top of it. Relationships become strained. Communication breaks down. Regret follows later once emotions settle. Patience interrupts this cycle. It creates space between stress and behavior. That space gives wisdom time to return before damage is done. One important truth must be understood clearly. Stress is unavoidable. No person reaches a point where life becomes completely free from frustrations, uncertainty, inconvenience, or pressure. Problems arrive unexpectedly. Plans change suddenly. People behave imperfectly. Some days feel mentally exhausting from beginning to end. Emotional maturity does not come from eliminating all stressful moments. It comes from learning how to move through those moments without becoming controlled by them. Most impatience comes from resistance. The mind resists reality instead of adapting to it. It says this should not be happening. People should not act this way. Life should be easier right now. The stronger this resistance becomes, the more emotional suffering increases. Patience begins when you stop fighting every uncomfortable moment internally. This does not mean you enjoy difficulty. It means you stop acting shocked every time life becomes inconvenient. Stressful moments stop feeling like personal attacks and start feeling like ordinary parts of human experience. A patient person understands that discomfort is temporary. They do not panic emotionally every time life becomes difficult for a few moments. They trust themselves enough to remain steady instead of immediately collapsing into anger, frustration, or emotional chaos. Think about how many arguments begin because somebody lacked patience for only a few minutes. A person interrupts before fully listening. Another assumes intention too quickly. Someone reacts emotionally before understanding the situation clearly. If even one person had paused briefly, the entire conflict could have unfolded differently. Patience changes communication dramatically. It allows listening instead of interrupting. It allows understanding before judgment. It allows thoughtful response instead of emotional reaction. This becomes especially important during moments of misunderstanding. Human beings are imperfect communicators. People speak unclearly sometimes. They misunderstand tone. They forget details. They explain things poorly while stressed or distracted. Without patience, every misunderstanding quickly becomes emotional conflict. A patient mind asks questions before making conclusions. It seeks clarity instead of immediately assuming disrespect. This protects relationships because many painful arguments begin from assumptions, not reality. Physical awareness also helps strengthen patience during stress. Emotional tension first appears in the body. Breathing changes, muscles tighten, heart rate increases, thoughts speed up. These signals appear before emotional reactions fully take over. If you learn to notice them early, you gain the opportunity to slow yourself down before losing control. During stressful moments, pause and pay attention to your breathing. Slow breathing calms the nervous system naturally. Relax your jaw, shoulders, and hands intentionally. Lower your voice instead of raising it. Calm physical behavior helps prevent emotional escalation. Many people wait until emotions become overwhelming before attempting self-control. But patience becomes easier when practiced early, during the first signs of tension. Catching irritation early prevents emotional explosions later. Another important part of patience is accepting that not everything deserves immediate resolution. Some problems improve with time, space, and emotional distance. Impulsive people often feel pressure to solve every emotional issue instantly, but emotionally charged moments rarely produce wise decisions. There is strength in stepping back temporarily when emotions feel too intense. Walking away respectfully for a short time can prevent lasting damage. A calmer mind sees situations more clearly than an emotionally flooded one. Patience also means tolerating uncertainty without becoming emotionally unstable. Many people feel deeply uncomfortable when they do not know what will happen next. Uncertainty creates anxiety, and anxiety often transforms into irritability. The mind desperately wants control, reassurance, and immediate answers, but life rarely provides certainty constantly. Strong individuals learn how to function without needing complete emotional security every moment. They remain grounded while waiting for clarity instead of becoming reactive during uncertainty. Traffic delays, crowded spaces, technical problems, long lines, unexpected changes, and difficult people all become opportunities to practice patience daily. These moments may seem small, but they train emotional endurance. If you lose control during every minor inconvenience, larger challenges will feel impossible to handle calmly. A patient person treats ordinary frustrations as emotional training instead of personal punishment. They understand that emotional discipline strengthens through repetition. Every delayed reaction, every calm breath, and every thoughtful pause builds stronger self-control gradually. This mindset creates resilience because patience becomes a practiced habit rather than a forced emotional struggle. Another major cause of impatience is exhaustion. Tired minds become emotionally fragile. When sleep, stress, pressure, and mental overload accumulate, patience weakens significantly. This is why emotional discipline requires caring for your physical and mental health consistently. Rest matters deeply. Quiet time matters. Emotional recovery matters. A constantly exhausted nervous system cannot maintain calmness forever. Respecting your limits prevents emotional reactions that come from burnout rather than genuine problems. Patience also grows through perspective. During stressful moments, ask yourself whether the situation will truly matter deeply 1 week from now, 1 month from now, or 1 year from now. Many emotional reactions lose intensity once viewed from a wider perspective. This simple reflection helps separate temporary frustration from genuinely important issues. Not every inconvenience deserves emotional energy. Wise people learn how to preserve peace by refusing to overreact to temporary discomfort. Humility also strengthens patience. Pride creates emotional sensitivity because it constantly demands validation, control, and comfort. Humble individuals tolerate inconvenience more calmly because their ego does not need every situation to unfold perfectly. A humble person can admit misunderstanding without defensiveness. They can wait without feeling insulted. They can experience frustration without turning it into emotional drama. This flexibility creates inner stability. Patience becomes even more valuable during family conflict and close relationships. The people closest to you will occasionally test your emotional limits because closeness naturally includes imperfection. Everyone has stressful days, emotional struggles, and moments of weakness. Impatient reactions often wound the people you care about most deeply because emotional familiarity lowers self-control. Many individuals speak more harshly to loved ones than strangers, simply because emotions feel safer there. But emotional safety should never become permission for careless behavior. Patience protects love. It allows conversations to remain respectful during disagreement. It prevents temporary emotions from damaging long-term trust. Children especially learn emotional behavior by observing adult patience. If they constantly witness explosive reactions, they absorb that emotional pattern themselves. Calm behavior teaches emotional stability more powerfully than lectures ever could. Your patience becomes part of the emotional atmosphere around you. People feel calmer, safer, and more respected when your presence remains steady during stressful moments. Patience also improves decision-making significantly. Emotional urgency often creates poor choices because the mind becomes narrow under stress. Calm individuals think more clearly. They see consequences more accurately. They avoid unnecessary mistakes because they do not allow temporary emotions to control permanent decisions. This creates better outcomes professionally, personally, and emotionally. Patience prevents impulsive words, reckless choices, damaged trust, and avoidable conflict. There will still be moments where frustration rises strongly. Emotional discipline does not mean becoming emotionless. It means learning how to experience emotions without immediately surrendering to them. Progress happens gradually. At first, you may only notice impatience after reacting poorly. Later, you begin recognizing tension earlier. Eventually, you develop enough awareness to remain calm during situations that once controlled your emotions completely. That transformation changes your entire life. Stressful moments stop feeling dangerous because you trust your ability to handle them wisely. Relationships improve because others no longer fear emotional unpredictability. Inner peace grows because your emotions stop controlling every difficult experience. Patience is not built during peaceful moments alone. It is built during real life when things go wrong unexpectedly and you still choose discipline over reaction. Every stressful moment gives you a choice. You can continue feeding emotional impulsiveness or strengthen emotional endurance. You can allow frustration to speak for you, or you can pause long enough for wisdom to return. Those small moments shape character more than dramatic achievements ever will. A patient person carries a quiet strength into every room because they are not easily shaken by ordinary difficulty. Their calmness creates stability for themselves and others. Their emotional control protects relationships, decisions, and peace. And over time, patience stops feeling like effort and starts becoming part of who you are. Chapter 8. Develop healthier communication skills that prevent unnecessary emotional conflict. The way you speak during difficult moments can either protect your relationships or slowly destroy them. Many emotional conflicts are not caused by evil intentions or impossible problems. They are caused by poor communication. A careless tone, a defensive reaction, a harsh sentence, or an impatient response can turn a small issue into emotional damage, lasting far longer than the original situation. People often believe conflict begins with disagreement alone, but disagreement is normal in every human relationship. The real danger begins when communication loses respect, clarity, and emotional control. Healthy communication is one of the strongest forms of emotional intelligence. It allows people to express frustration honestly without becoming destructive. It creates understanding instead of confusion. It protects relationships during stressful moments instead of weakening them. A person who learns how to communicate calmly gains the ability to solve problems without constantly creating emotional chaos. Many individuals never learned healthy communication growing up. They may have witnessed shouting, silence, emotional manipulation, sarcasm, blame, or constant criticism. Over time, these patterns became normal in their minds. Then later in life, they repeat those same emotional habits automatically during conflict, without realizing how damaging they are. Some people become aggressive when upset. Others shut down completely. Some interrupt constantly because they fear not being heard. Others avoid honest conversations until resentment quietly builds inside them. These habits may feel familiar, but familiarity does not make them healthy. Real communication requires awareness, discipline, and patience. It is not simply about talking. It is about understanding and being understood without emotional destruction. One of the biggest communication mistakes people make is speaking while emotionally flooded. When anger becomes intense, thinking becomes narrow. The mind focuses more on winning than understanding. During these moments, people often say things designed to hurt instead of solve problems. Later, regret appears because emotions temporarily controlled the conversation. This is why timing matters. Not every discussion should happen immediately. If emotions feel too intense, pause before continuing. A short break can prevent unnecessary damage. Calm conversations solve problems far more effectively than emotionally explosive ones. Healthy communication begins with emotional responsibility. Instead of attacking others with accusations, speak honestly about your own experience. There is a major difference between saying, "You never care about me," and saying, "I felt hurt when this happened." One creates defensiveness while the other invites understanding. Blame creates resistance. Honest expression creates connection. Many unnecessary conflicts happen because people communicate through assumptions instead of clarity. They expect others to automatically understand unspoken feelings, needs, or frustrations. Then anger appears when others fail to read their mind correctly. Clear communication removes confusion. Calmly explain what you need, what bothered you, and why it matters. Do not expect people to interpret hidden emotional signals perfectly. Human beings misunderstand each other easily, especially during stress. Tone matters as much as words. The exact same sentence can create understanding or conflict depending on how it is delivered. A calm, respectful tone lowers emotional defensiveness. A harsh, sarcastic, or aggressive tone immediately increases tension, even if the message itself is reasonable. People often remember how you spoke long after they forget the actual argument. Communication is not only about information, it is also emotional experience. Others remember whether they felt respected, safe, dismissed, attacked, or humiliated during conversations. This is why emotional discipline matters deeply during communication. If your goal is solving problems, your tone should support that goal, not sabotage it. Listening is another essential skill many people underestimate. Most individuals listen only long enough to prepare their next response. They interrupt mentally before the other person finishes speaking. This creates shallow conversations where neither person truly feels understood. Patient listening changes relationships. When someone feels genuinely heard, emotional tension often decreases naturally. Many people become defensive because they feel ignored, misunderstood, or emotionally dismissed. Listening does not mean automatically agreeing. It means giving attention seriously before reacting. It means trying to understand another perspective completely before defending your own position. Another unhealthy communication habit is emotional exaggeration. During frustration, people often use absolute language, like "you always do this," or "nothing ever changes." These statements rarely reflect reality accurately. Instead, they intensify emotional conflict because the other person immediately focuses on defending themselves against the exaggeration. Calmer language creates more productive conversations. Speak specifically about the actual issue instead of attacking the entire person or relationship. Focus on behaviors, situations, and solutions, rather than emotional generalizations. Healthy communication also requires humility. Sometimes you misunderstand situations. Sometimes your emotions distort perception. Sometimes you are wrong. Pride makes communication difficult because pride cares more about protecting ego than discovering truth. A humble person can admit mistakes without collapsing emotionally. They can apologize sincerely. They can reconsider their perspective. This flexibility creates emotional maturity because conversations stop becoming battles for superiority. Apology is one of the most powerful communication skills when used honestly. Many people avoid apologizing because they associate it with weakness. In reality, sincere accountability shows emotional strength. Admitting harmful behavior protects trust far more than stubborn defensiveness ever will. A meaningful apology does not hide behind excuses. It does not immediately redirect blame. It accepts responsibility clearly. This kind of honesty rebuilds emotional safety within relationships. Communication also improves when you stop treating disagreement as personal rejection. Different opinions are normal. Different emotional reactions are normal. Two people can care deeply about each other while still viewing situations differently sometimes. Emotionally immature individuals interpret disagreement as emotional attack. Emotionally mature individuals stay calm enough to discuss differences respectfully. They understand that disagreement does not automatically destroy love, respect, or connection. This perspective reduces unnecessary emotional intensity significantly. Conversations become less threatening because the goal shifts from winning toward understanding. Body language also affects communication strongly. Eye-rolling, dismissive gestures, aggressive posture, or avoidance silently communicate disrespect even before words appear. Calm body language creates emotional safety during difficult discussions, maintains steady breathing, relaxed posture, and controlled movement during conflict. Physical calmness helps support emotional clarity. The nervous system responds to body signals constantly. Calm physical behavior lowers emotional escalation naturally. Another important communication skill is asking questions instead of making immediate conclusions. Questions create understanding while assumptions create conflict. Instead of saying "you ignored me," intentionally ask what happened. Instead of assuming disrespect, ask for clarification calmly. Curiosity reduces emotional tension because it opens space for explanation instead of immediate judgment. Many arguments happen because people react to imagined intentions instead of verified reality. Healthy communication also means choosing the right moment for serious discussions. Difficult conversations handled during exhaustion, stress, distraction, or public embarrassment usually unfold poorly. Timing affects emotional openness greatly. Wise people recognize when someone is emotionally unavailable for productive conversation. They wait for calmer moments instead of forcing resolution during emotional chaos. There is also strength in knowing when silence is wiser than speaking. Not every emotional impulse deserves expression. Some reactions create more harm than value. Taking time to think before speaking protects relationships from unnecessary damage. Silence becomes unhealthy only when it is used to punish, manipulate, or avoid responsibility completely. But thoughtful pauses often create clarity. Communication becomes healthier when honesty and kindness work together. Some people pride themselves on brutal honesty while ignoring emotional impact entirely. Others avoid honesty completely to escape discomfort. Emotional maturity requires balance. You can speak truthfully without becoming cruel. You can set boundaries respectfully. You can express frustration without humiliation. Strong communication protects both honesty and dignity simultaneously. Another major source of emotional conflict is unresolved resentment. Small frustrations, ignored repeatedly, eventually become emotional explosions. Healthy communicators address concerns early before bitterness grows deeply. This requires courage because honest conversations can feel uncomfortable initially. but temporary discomfort prevents larger emotional damage later. Calm communication solves problems earlier, while emotions remain manageable. Technology has also weakened communication in many modern relationships. Text messages, social media, and digital conversations remove tone, facial expression, and emotional context. Misunderstandings happen easily through screens. Emotional reactions often become harsher online because distance reduces empathy. Whenever possible, important emotional conversations should happen directly, not impulsively, through messages written during frustration. Your communication style shapes your emotional environment daily. Calm, respectful speech creates calmer relationships. Aggressive, careless speech creates emotional instability. The atmosphere around you reflects the emotional quality of your communication consistently. Children, especially, absorb communication patterns deeply. They learn emotional behavior from observation more than instruction. The way you handle frustration, disagreements, becomes part of the emotional example they carry into their own future relationships. This is why communication is not only personal. It affects families, friendships, workplaces, and entire emotional cultures around you. Improving communication requires consistent awareness. Pay attention to how others respond after conversations with you. Do people feel heard or dismissed, safe or anxious, understood or attacked? Honest reflection reveals communication habits clearly. Growth happens gradually. At first, you may notice unhealthy patterns only after conflict occurs. Later, you begin recognizing them during conversations themselves. Eventually, healthier communication becomes more natural because emotional discipline strengthens through practice. Do not expect perfection immediately. Communication is a skill developed over time. The goal is steady improvement, not flawless interaction. Every calmer conversation, every patient response, and every respectful disagreement strengthens emotional maturity. The ability to communicate well during difficult moments is one of the greatest forms of personal power. It protects peace while preserving honesty. It reduces unnecessary suffering. It builds trust, stability, and emotional safety. Strong communication does not mean avoiding conflict completely. It means handling conflict without destroying connection. When people feel respected during disagreement, relationships become stronger instead of weaker. Problems become easier to solve because emotional chaos no longer controls every conversation. And once you master healthier communication, your words stop becoming weapons during stress and start becoming tools for understanding, healing, and growth. Chapter 9. Transform painful emotional patterns into mature and peaceful thinking. The moment you stop allowing old emotional pain to control your present reactions, you begin stepping into a calmer and stronger version of yourself. Many people carry emotional patterns for years without fully understanding how deeply those patterns shape daily life. They react quickly during conflict. They assume rejection too easily. They become defensive during criticism. They struggle to trust peace because their mind has become trained to expect emotional discomfort. Over time, these reactions stop feeling like habits and start feeling like personality. But painful emotional patterns are not permanent identity. They are learned responses that can be transformed through awareness, discipline, and emotional maturity. Every emotional pattern begins somewhere. No one is born automatically expecting disappointment, anger, rejection, or conflict in every situation. Repeated experiences shape emotional behavior slowly. Harsher environments, difficult relationships, emotional neglect, betrayal, constant criticism, or repeated stress can train the mind to stay emotionally guarded. The brain adapts to survive emotional pain. Unfortunately, survival habits that once protected you can later damage your peace and relationships if they remain unchanged. Some people become emotionally reactive because they spent years needing to defend themselves constantly. Others become distant because vulnerability once led to disappointment. Some expect conflict during ordinary conversations because tension became familiar early in life. These patterns often continue automatically, long after the original situation has ended. The problem is not only the painful experiences themselves. The deeper problem is allowing those experiences to permanently shape how you think, behave, and respond emotionally. A painful past may explain certain emotional habits, but it should not control your future forever. Transformation begins when you recognize that emotional patterns are trainable. The mind changes through repeated thought, repeated behavior, and repeated emotional response. Just as negativity can become habitual, peace can also become habitual. But that process requires conscious effort. Many people wait for emotions to change automatically before changing behavior. Mature thinking works differently. It changes behavior intentionally first and allows emotions to slowly follow through repetition. You do not become peaceful overnight because you decide to. Peace develops gradually through practiced emotional discipline. One important step is identifying recurring emotional cycles honestly. Pay attention to situations that repeatedly create similar emotional reactions. Do you become defensive whenever corrected? Do you expect abandonment whenever someone becomes distant temporarily? Do you assume disrespect too quickly? Do you emotionally shut down during tension? Patterns reveal themselves through repetition. Without awareness, patterns remain invisible. People continue reacting automatically while believing every emotional response is completely justified by the present moment. But emotionally mature individuals examine themselves honestly enough to notice repetition. Once patterns become visible, responsibility begins. You can no longer pretend emotional habits are random accidents. You begin understanding that certain reactions have become conditioned responses, strengthened over time. This awareness is powerful because it separates you from the pattern itself. Instead of saying, "This is just who I am," you begin saying, "This is a habit I learned, and habits can change." Another important truth must be accepted clearly. Emotional pain often distorts perception. Hurt people frequently interpret neutral situations negatively because the mind becomes trained to expect emotional danger. A delayed message feels like rejection. A disagreement feels like abandonment. Silence feels threatening. Criticism feels humiliating. The nervous system starts reacting to emotional memory instead of present reality. This creates unnecessary suffering because the mind constantly prepares for pain even during ordinary moments. Mature thinking requires slowing down these automatic interpretations. Ask yourself whether the current situation truly matches the emotional intensity you are feeling. Is this person actually attacking you, or is your mind reacting from older emotional wounds? Is this disappointment temporary, or are you turning it into a permanent emotional conclusion? These questions create emotional distance from impulsive thinking. Distance allows wisdom to return before emotional reactions become destructive. Peaceful thinking also requires releasing emotional attachment to suffering itself. Some individuals become so accustomed to emotional struggle that calmness feels unfamiliar. Their mind constantly searches for problems, conflict, or disappointment because emotional tension became psychologically normal over many years. This creates exhausting mental habits. The person overthinks conversations, expects betrayal, prepares for rejection, and mentally rehearses conflict before it even exists. Even peaceful situations become emotionally draining because the mind no longer knows how to rest. Healing requires retraining the nervous system slowly. Calmness must become familiar again. This happens through repeated exposure to steadier thinking, calmer behavior, and emotionally safe environments. Your inner dialogue matters deeply during this process. The way you speak to yourself shapes emotional experience constantly. Harsh self-criticism strengthens emotional pain. Thoughts like "I always ruin everything," "nobody cares about me," or "nothing will ever improve" create emotional heaviness because the mind absorbs repeated messages seriously. Mature thinking replaces emotional exaggeration with balanced honesty. Instead of emotionally attacking yourself, You begin responding with clarity, responsibility, and patience. You acknowledge mistakes without destroying your self-worth completely. Self-respect becomes essential here. A person constantly attacking themselves internally struggles to create emotional peace externally. Compassion toward yourself does not remove accountability. It simply removes unnecessary emotional cruelty from the growth process. Forgiveness also becomes important. Although many people misunderstand forgiveness completely, forgiveness does not mean approving harmful behavior or pretending pain never happened. It means refusing to let old emotional wounds continue controlling your present emotional state endlessly. Holding resentment for years keeps emotional pain active inside the mind. The body remains tense. Thoughts remain heavy. Emotional reactions remain sensitive because unresolved bitterness continues shaping perception. Peaceful thinking grows when you stop feeding emotional wounds constantly through repeated mental replay. You cannot heal while reopening the same emotional injury internally every day. This does not mean forgetting difficult experiences. It means learning from them without remaining emotionally imprisoned by them. Another important shift involves accepting emotional responsibility fully. Mature individuals stop blaming every emotional reaction entirely on other people. They understand that while others may influence feelings, personal behavior still remains a choice. This mindset creates empowerment because it returns emotional authority back to you. Instead of waiting for everyone else to change perfectly before feeling peaceful, you begin strengthening your own emotional stability directly. Stoic wisdom teaches something powerful here. External events cannot always be controlled, but inner response can be trained. This understanding creates freedom because emotional peace no longer depends completely on outside circumstances. Mature thinking also becomes less emotionally dramatic. Painful patterns often create extreme interpretations. One mistake becomes total failure. One disagreement becomes relationship collapse. One stressful day becomes proof that life is hopeless. Emotionally grounded individuals learn how to think with greater balance. They stop turning temporary discomfort into permanent identity. They recognize that emotions fluctuate naturally and difficult moments eventually pass. This balanced perspective protects mental peace significantly. Life becomes easier to navigate because the mind stops amplifying every challenge unnecessarily. Healthy routines also support emotional transformation strongly. Sleep, exercise, reflection, healthy boundaries, quiet time, and meaningful goals create emotional stability gradually. Painful emotional patterns grow stronger during chaos, exhaustion, and constant stress. Peaceful thinking strengthens when life contains structure, balance, and recovery. Your environment matters too. Constant negativity, emotionally unstable relationships, toxic communication, and endless drama reinforce unhealthy emotional habits. Mature growth sometimes requires creating distance from influences that repeatedly disturb your peace. This does not mean isolating yourself completely. It means becoming intentional about what energy you allow into your emotional life consistently. Another important practice is learning how to sit with emotions without immediately reacting to them. Painful patterns often create urgency. The mind wants immediate reassurance, immediate answers, immediate emotional release. But emotional maturity grows through tolerance. You begin realizing that emotions rise and fall naturally without requiring impulsive action every time. Sadness passes, frustration softens, anxiety settles, anger weakens. The more you observe emotions calmly, the less power they hold over behavior. This creates emotional freedom because feelings stop controlling every decision automatically. Progress may feel slow sometimes. Emotional patterns built over years rarely disappear quickly. There will be moments where old reactions return. That does not mean growth failed. It simply means healing requires repetition, patience, and consistency. Every calmer response matters. Every balanced thought matters. Every moment where you interrupt an old emotional habit strengthens the new direction you are building. Over time, people around you begin noticing the difference. Conversations feel calmer. Reactions become steadier. Emotional tension decreases. Your presence begins carrying more peace because your inner life becomes less chaotic. Most importantly, your relationship with yourself changes. You stop fearing your own emotions constantly. You stop feeling trapped inside old reactions. You begin trusting your ability to remain grounded during difficult moments. That trust creates quiet confidence. Not arrogance, not emotional numbness. Just steady inner stability. Painful emotional patterns may explain parts of your past, but they do not need to define your future permanently. Human beings are capable of emotional growth at any stage of life when they become willing to practice awareness, honesty, patience, and discipline consistently. The goal is not becoming emotionless. The goal is becoming emotionally wise. Wise enough to recognize old patterns before they control you. Wise enough to choose peace instead of emotional chaos repeatedly. Wise enough to understand that strength is not found in reacting intensely, but in remaining steady during difficulty. Your mind can become calmer. Your reactions can become healthier. Your emotional world can become lighter. But transformation begins the moment you stop identifying with painful patterns and start training yourself toward peaceful thinking intentionally every single day. Chapter 10. Create a calmer mindset that supports lasting emotional self-control. A truly calm mind does not happen by chance. It is built through daily decisions that protect your emotional stability, even when life becomes unpredictable. Most people think emotional self-control is about stopping anger in the moment it appears. But lasting control comes from something deeper. It comes from building a mindset that naturally reduces emotional intensity before reactions even form. When the mind is trained to stay steady, by default, anger loses its power to take over so easily. This is not about suppressing emotions. It is about shaping the internal environment where emotions arise in the first place. A calm mindset begins with how you interpret life. Two people can face the same situation and experience completely different emotional outcomes. One sees pressure and becomes overwhelmed. The other sees pressure and becomes focused. One interprets delay as frustration. The other interprets it as time to adjust. The event is the same, but the internal meaning is different. Emotional control depends heavily on this interpretation system. Many people live with a mind that reacts instantly before understanding fully. The moment something uncomfortable happens, the brain jumps into judgment. This is unfair. It removes clarity. It turns small events into emotional problems. A calm mindset interrupts that instant reaction. It creates space between what happens and how you respond to it. That space is where self-control becomes possible. One of the strongest foundations of a calm mindset is slowing down mental speed. Modern life trains the mind to move quickly from one thought to another without pause. Constant notifications, conversations, stress and stimulation keep the nervous system in a state of urgency. When urgency becomes normal, the mind starts treating everything like an emergency, including small problems that do not require emotional intensity. Slowing down does not mean becoming inactive. It means giving your mind permission to process before reacting. When something happens, practice not responding immediately inside your head. Allow thoughts to settle before forming conclusions. This reduces emotional exaggeration and prevents impulsive reactions that later create regret. Another important part of building calmness is separating facts from interpretation. Facts are what actually happened. Interpretation is what your mind adds to the situation. Most emotional suffering comes from interpretation, not facts. Someone does not reply quickly. That is a fact. The interpretation becomes, they are ignoring me, or they do not care about me. That interpretation creates emotional pain that may not reflect reality at all. A calm mindset learns to pause at the level of fact before adding emotional meaning. This simple habit protects mental stability. It prevents unnecessary assumptions and reduces emotional overreaction. Breathing also plays a major role in emotional self-control. When emotions rise, breathing becomes shallow and fast, which signals the body that something is wrong. This increases stress even more. By consciously slowing your breath, you send a signal to the nervous system that there is no immediate danger. This naturally reduces emotional intensity and helps the mind regain balance. Calm people use their breath as an anchor during emotional moments. They do not allow their body to spiral into panic while their mind tries to catch up. Instead, they stabilize the body first, which makes it easier to stabilize thoughts. Another core element of a calm mindset is emotional non-identification. Many people believe every emotion that appears inside them is who they are. If they feel anger, they believe they are an angry person in that moment. If they feel sadness, they believe they are weak. This identification creates emotional confusion because feelings constantly change. A calm mindset understands that emotions are temporary signals, not identity. Anger is not who you are. It is something you are experiencing. Once you separate identity from emotion, you stop reacting as if every feeling defines your character. This creates space for choice instead of automatic behavior. Expectation management is another key factor. Emotional instability often grows from expecting life to remain comfortable, predictable, and cooperative at all times. When reality inevitably contradicts these expectations, frustration appears quickly. A calm mindset does not expect perfection from life. It expects variation. Some moments will be smooth, others will be challenging. This understanding prevents emotional shock when difficulties appear. When you are not surprised by difficulty, you do not react emotionally as strongly to it. You adjust instead of collapsing. Another powerful shift is learning to reduce internal pressure. Many people constantly pressure themselves to respond perfectly to every situation. They believe they must always say the right thing, handle everything correctly, and never make emotional mistakes. This pressure creates tension inside the mind. Under tension, even small problems feel heavier than they actually are. A calm mindset allows imperfection in your own responses. It accepts that you may not always react ideally. You may need time. You may make mistakes. You may need to correct yourself later. This acceptance removes internal pressure, which naturally reduces emotional volatility. Self-talk also shapes emotional stability deeply. The way you speak to yourself during stressful moments determines how your mind responds. Harsh internal language increases emotional intensity. Supportive and grounded self-talk reduces it. Instead of saying, "I cannot handle this," a calm mindset says, "This is difficult, but I can take it step by step." Instead of saying everything is going wrong, it says this situation is temporary and manageable. The goal is not false positivity. The goal is balanced internal communication that keeps your mind steady during pressure. A calm mindset also develops through reducing unnecessary mental clutter. When the mind is overloaded with too many thoughts, responsibilities, worries, and distractions, emotional control becomes harder. Clarity is essential for stability. Simplifying your mental space helps reduce emotional noise. This can be done by focusing on one task at a time instead of mentally juggling everything at once. It can also involve reducing constant exposure to negativity and overstimulation that keeps the mind reactive. A quieter mind is naturally more stable. Another important principle is delaying emotional reaction. Instead of reacting instantly to a triggering moment, train yourself to wait. Even a short delay creates distance between impulse and action. In that space, you regain control. Many emotional mistakes happen because reaction happens too fast before awareness fully activates. A calm mindset also understands that not every problem requires emotional energy. Some situations can simply be observed and left to settle on their own. Not every comment needs a response. Not every action needs interpretation. Not every situation needs emotional engagement. Choosing where to invest emotional energy is a sign of maturity. Physical stability supports mental calmness as well. Poor sleep, irregular routines, and constant exhaustion weaken emotional control significantly. A tired mind reacts faster and thinks less clearly. Caring for your body is indirectly caring for your emotional stability. Rest, hydration, movement, and routine all contribute to a calmer internal state. Another key element is building trust in your ability to handle life. Many emotional reactions come from fear that things are becoming unmanageable. When you trust yourself more deeply, you react less dramatically. You know that even if something goes wrong, you will still find a way forward. This internal confidence reduces panic and emotional overreaction. A calm mindset also requires letting go of the need to control every external outcome. Control is limited. You cannot fully control how people behave, how situations unfold, or how quickly problems resolve. The attempt to control everything creates constant frustration. Emotional control improves when you focus on what is within your influence, such as your response, attitude, and effort, while releasing what is not. Over time, these practices create a shift. You begin noticing that situations which once triggered strong emotional reactions no longer affect you in the same way. You respond slower with more clarity and less intensity. You recover faster after stress. You stop carrying emotional residue from one moment into the next. Calmness becomes your baseline instead of something you force during crisis. Emotional control becomes less about effort and more about natural stability. This does not mean life becomes free from stress. It means stress no longer controls your behavior. Challenges still appear, but they pass through a more grounded mind. Reactions become measured instead of explosive. Thoughts become clearer under pressure instead of scattered. A calm mindset is not built in a single moment. It is created through repeated daily choices that teach your mind a new way of responding to life. Each time you choose pause over impulse, clarity over assumption, and understanding over reaction, you strengthen emotional control. Eventually, calmness stops feeling like discipline and starts feeling like your normal state. And when that happens, emotional stability is no longer something you try to achieve. It becomes who you are.